when you're sort of on what do you call it? You're not like massively posting publicly, but it was quite good to see how you're getting on with various things. So yeah, that was quite cool. I'm going to try something here, which I don't think I'm going to be able to do. Oh, hang on. Oh, I can't do it. Don't worry. There's something I was trying to do on Facebook, but forget about it. Multiple ways to get online to more and more things, but we're just going to have to leave that to one side whilst we get on with the show. Anyway, welcome everybody to Brainfood Live On Air. Happy New Year to you. This is actually season 5. I think we've been doing this for 5 years, Adam. Would you believe it? 5 years, Brainfood. We can even go back in time and to episode 1 and be able to track exactly how young and youthful we looked only 5 years or so ago, because doing this in a weekly grind has aged us massively, mate. It really has. But anyway, happy new year, everybody. Season 5 of Brainfood Live On Air, and we always start the year with the same kind of theme, which is just a forecast of the year. I know we're 10 days in, we're probably into week 2 for a lot of us already, but let's do one show where we're going to look forward and see how the year is looking for us from a number of angles. And we're going to be talking about HR tech investment. We're going to be talking about career sites, career building assessment stuff. We're going to be talking about DE&I. We're going to be talking about tech and product, tech hiring, all kinds of crazy stuff. So welcome everybody to the show. I want to just make sure, of course, everyone can hear me okay. So we're on Crowdcast here, of course. If you can hear me okay, let me know. Hello, Louise. Nice to see you. Hello, Luke. Let us know in the chat, folks, if you can hear and see Adam and I on the chat. That'd be wonderful. We should be broadcasting this live on a number of LinkedIns as well. So if you can hear me on LinkedIn, let me know. 142 people attending this on LinkedIn. Amazing. Yeah, make sure you can let me, if you can hear me okay on LinkedIn, folks. Just comment on one of the threads there. Let me know the audio is fine. Loud and clearly. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Michael. Okay, cool. We can get on with the show. But before we do that, we always have to thank our sponsors, because guess what? Brainfood Live is sold out again for 2025. Would you, Adam and Ebit? I think we've been running 5 years, but I think for the last 4 years, this show's been sponsored every single time. So thank you for our sponsors. Obviously, it's fantastic. We can't do this show without us, without you. This week is, of course, it's Ashby ATS. Ashby, probably the most talked about ATS out there. I think everyone's looking to upgrade to a new product. Ashby seems to be in the consideration for that. They're obviously one of the most dynamic and interesting products out there in this busy space. But do make sure you check out Ashby if you have a chance, and if you're thinking about upgrading, they really should be part of your consideration going forward. And we've actually got Jim Miller as well coming up, following his amazing sort of contribution last year with his forecast also. Okay, cool. Let's get on with the show. Adam Gordon, great to see you. You're obviously not, I don't know, you're in the gym somewhere, aren't you? So I don't know where the heck you are.
Yeah, I work at David Lloyd.
Commitment to audio, video, but where are you?
I work at David Lloyd, and actually, I said that to my daughter the other day. She went, "Wait, you work for David Lloyd?" I should have said, "Yeah, I'm a barista, actually."
That's it. More impressive to your daughter than what you're doing now. But all well and good. Great to see you, Adam. Let's dive straight in. Let's have a look at the newsletter. Did you read it last week? And if so, what was interesting, mate?
I did read it. Let's talk first of all about Radency's article about optimizing SEO in the age of the large language model. The one thing I kept reading and waiting for, I'll come to it in a second, right? It basically said that you need to create high quality, structured, user-focused content in order that a large language model is going to be able to better read it, better index it, better, make use of it, and all that type of thing. I couldn't get any information about feed the large language model. Go on to ChatGPT and start writing all about your company and why it's good to work there and your employer brand and all that sort of stuff. And then it's going to come up like higher. Now, I don't know whether it is or it isn't, but the fact that wasn't a tactic mentioned at all in that article, I found really slightly strange.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's a great post. I don't think they give you a how-to, probably because they're going to give you a service for it, basically. They're going to say, you know what, if you want to learn how to do this, come and speak to us. But it's a really good idea, folks, which is has sort of the search engine era is now evolving to the point that actually you need to be writing your content so that it gets into the training data for these large language models, because we're getting to the point now where we're asking ChatGPT to say, okay, who are the top things that we need to care about? Who are the top providers for this? And it does actually produce you some information. So if you're selling something or anything, and you're not sort of thinking about this, then you probably should be. I mean, I found myself, obviously because I'm prolific so again, I'm very fortunate by just being massively public and being prolific. And what ends up happening is that you are on these results. And I'm thinking probably that's not a bad thing to come out there. There's a little bit of a kind of a first mover advantage, totally unfair first mover advantage, incidentally. So if you're sitting there thinking this is not fair, correct, totally not fair. However, it does mean that it's going to advantage people that have just put more stuff in to the public web that then gets crawled by, firstly, of course, search engines, but that content is then fed into large language models. So it makes sense for you to be there if you're selling anything, although big trade-off is obviously your privacy is also going to be, you're going to be cooked, and you might actually be prey to information in that model, in the output that you've got no control over. So for instance, just as an example, one of the examples someone shared with me that I came up on a prompt, but which I didn't mind because it wasn't a bad thing for me, but it was not accurate. I should not have been on the list that they recommended. But there you go. I was there, and it was like, okay, I can't do anything about that. So crazy. Anyway, good. I've shared it in the link there, so check it out.
I was going to say, I was just surprised that there was no tactic mentioned of go on to like Claude and ask questions all about your company so that it starts prioritizing learning about that, and then it's built that into its model. Okay, next one.
Yeah, we don't know. I mean, it's definitely something. It's probably a Brainfood Live topic down the track. Yeah, give us another one, mate.
Okay, so Johnny Campbell's 5 hiring trends that you need to know for 2025. The first one was that AI's reshaping workflows and having a very large impact on what we do in recruiting. One of them was to do with candidate vetting, and basically we're going to have to work out how to not have cheating candidates. Simple way of describing it. But then the third one that I thought I would point out is that demand for traditional recruitment tasks is shrinking as automation is taking over some of the traditional like talent sourcing and interviewing and things like that. And of course,
your Wi-Fi, I think, is a bit choppy, mate. To be honest, I'm missing some words here. I think some people have said this as well. Don't worry, but I think we got what you said. But yeah, dude, Johnny Campbell, credit to him. He actually featured twice in last week's newsletter with original content, which I think is the first that anybody's ever sort of featured in. So he's either sort of sandbagged his, go and move, Adam. But he's either sandbagged his quality content and posted them in the right place. But yeah, both of those posts were well worth keeping an eye on. We're going to be seeing Johnny, I think, in a couple of weeks' time. We're both going to be in Bangalore. So well done on those posts. Definitely worth reading. It was the most read post of that week. 5 hiring trends. And no doubt, by the way, that quality control, candidate verification, all that type of stuff is going to be a bigger part of the recruiter's responsibility than ever before. So I think it's laborious work. It's not interesting work, but it is work. Because you know what, at some point, who's the guardian of quality control for the candidates that hit the line manager? It has to be the recruiter. So imagine if you're in a situation, you've got people going down the pipeline, you haven't vetted properly, you haven't background checked, you haven't even checked out whether they're the same human being that entered the process. It's going to be on you. So I do think that's something that you need to be aware of. So well done, Johnny, putting that together. Cool. All right, one more, Adam, before we get on and get our guests on here.
Yeah, okay. Let's just very briefly talk about Google's white paper on AI agents, on agentic. It's quite a beast, and it's really for probably really quite highly technical people to read that. This is going to be an interesting topic for this year. I think we probably will do a show about it, but I also believe it's like in the background. It's an algorithmic type of thing, much more so than it is a recruiter thing. Recruiters are never going to like set up agents or anything like that. It's going to be baked into the applicant tracking system. It's going to be baked into LinkedIn. It's going to be baked into the technologies that we use every day. But it's definitely one to watch.
Yeah, cool. Thanks, Adam. You know what? I think I've got a bit of internet problems as well. Maybe it's just the freezing temperatures we're getting in the UK. It's not dealing with it, but I've just had a massively sort of sticky moment there where I couldn't post that link into the chat stream. But anyway, worth reading that white paper. It is a technical white paper from Google, but I do think it's accessible. And even if it isn't accessible, just download it and stick it into an AI and tell it, simplify it for you. But agentic AI, we're going to hear that term more and more over this year. We're going to do loads of Brainfood Lives on it. I think it's probably going to be the cliche term associated with AI in recruiting for 2025. But we do need to care about it because vendors are producing some interesting things that are basically moving away from a product becoming a tool and really becoming kind of semi-autonomous, even maybe a fully autonomous agent. So there's different definitions as to what sort of an agent is, but agent meaning having agency. My interpretation is that this is something that is able to operate fairly autonomously without certainly without explicit instruction and can make decisions very locally. So it's closer to being an automated or a digital coworker than perhaps a tool. So really interesting. Go read the white paper, even if it is a bit of a tough chew for non-technical folks. Go ahead and do that because we've got to get up to speed. Simple as that. Don't have a choice. Okay, cool. Let's get on with it. Let's get some of our guests on because it's going to be a long show. Bas, you've been complaining about the internet quality. Let's test yours. So we'll bring you on stage straight away. He's going to come on. He's going to be like,
could be he's the problem.
You've got. I wonder whether he is. His chat's the problem, but there we go. No, there he is. Bas van der Hattard. How are you, Bas?
I'm good. It's cold here too, but unfortunately, my place is one of the few ones without snow. So it's just cold and ugly instead of cold and beautiful winter wonderland.
Same as us, mate. We are just cold. It's miserable. It's wet. It's just not nice. So there we have it. But Bas, great to see you on the show. Wonderful to kick this off. I am in the UK for sure, and I will be here this is the final week, I think, before I start moving around. But Bas, for people who don't know you, can you quickly introduce yourself? Who are you? What it is you do, man?
Bas van der Hattard. I host the biggest Dutch TA event in Dutch. I host a digital event. I do TA leader dinners. I wrote a book with Kevin Wheeler called Talent Acquisition Excellence. I do talks all over the world. That's where we tend to meet up in places which are now burned down in LA. Thought going out to everybody who doesn't have cold but too much heat there now. And and I consult a bit sometimes on assessment tech and on corporate career sites.
Yeah, thank you, Bas, and thanks for letting us know. Do connect with Bas, one of the leading experts, definitely on the assessment side of things on tech and also in recruitment generally. And yeah, Bas and I were in LA actually only 2 months or so ago, something like this. So very sad to see the situation over there. Crazy amount of damage that's going on there, and yeah, it's just incredibly sad. So hopefully everyone is going to be okay in the end. Bas, let's go to forecast. That's the nature of this show. There's two topics I wanted to speak to you about because you obviously do a very interesting survey every year. Where it's not even a survey, it's actually just testing, isn't it? You test career sites for their features basically. And I'll be interested to know what your forecast is for 2025 in terms of how career sites might develop. Any particular things that you're confident will emerge in the next 12 months?
Well, on the career sites, like you said, I researched the 500 biggest, or actually I hire people to do that based on over 100 data points. I researched 500 biggest corporates in the Netherlands, and I don't see that much changing. I expect we'll have better job descriptions. We actually also measure all the data which is in a job description or a job ad. And I expect there to be more jobs with location, which is weird that you wouldn't mention, where is it located? And remote is also a location, right? I expect it's like at 80% now. As far as I'm concerned, that's just weird, not saying where the location is. We've already seen in the Netherlands, we're just about 60% of them have a salary in there. I expect those numbers to increase as well, because people are using more and more job writing tools, and they'll just advise it to be in there. And when tech says something, it tends to change. We actually saw, which you lost your bet on, a decrease in the number of chatbots last year. But we also saw a number of decrease in the number of chatbots which were deemed terrible, according to my researchers. So what I think happened is that everybody who had a really crap chatbot, but at least we have a chatbot, got rid of it, but they were too afraid to replace it. So I expect we'll see an increase in chat-like interfaces on career sites this year, simply because people are now more confident that the quality will be good enough. And it took them, I know actually from a few companies who got rid of their chatbot, then IT and legal wouldn't sign off on a new supplier because AI is scary and blah, blah, blah. And I'm talking about the major corporates here. So legal and IT have way too much to say in things and are way too scared of stuff. So those are the main things I expect.
That's a really interesting point. Like if you had a bad chatbot experience, are you like once bitten, twice shy on that as an implementer? Like, are you thinking, oh my God, this is so bad, we're never going to do it again? Or your confidence has been so shot that you're just so resistant to doing it? I can't imagine that situation occurring, actually. So what Bas was mentioning here was basically a decrease in the number of companies that had implemented a chatbot on career sites. And I thought, you know what, for sure that's going to continue to increase because we can see the efficacy, but apparently not. So maybe that was one of the reasons. Too early an implementation or bad implementation of chatbots, people pull back and then they're frightened to do it again.
If I can emphasize
that being a thing.
I was actually hired last year or 2 years ago by a company, by a major hospital, who literally said, please write an advice for us because IT forced us to use this chatbot, which isn't optimized for TA. The chatbot was complete and total useless crap. And they needed to say, please delete this chatbot. IT said, no, this is what we need to have as a hospital. It didn't do anything useful. It didn't interact with the ATS because they had a generalized chatbot and they weren't allowed to buy their own chatbot because IT had already funded a chatbot. And so now they just got rid of it because it was a detractor on everything employer brand. It was just insanely bad. But they needed, and
we have to kind of say what the difference between we have to say what's different between also various types of chatbots. Like the first generation of chatbots that we were all familiar with, like let's say you still get on banking, for instance, totally useless. No one, it's like preset questions, preset answers. So we say there's no use in that whatsoever. That is not what we're talking about. But as a candidate, you might just assume that that's your experience. So, if you encounter something that's terrible, you might immediately think that's not what I want. I need to blast through to get to a human. So yeah, still a bit of work there on the chatbots. Super, super interesting. Okay, Bas, we want to move on quickly. Adam, you want to say something on the chatbots, man? You got any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, actually, Madeline's put in a good comment. In fact, Madeline, Tim, has a few great comments in here. And Madeline said, I think with the chatbot can only really answer 4 questions, candidates get more frustrated. There's absolutely no reason why the chatbot can't read all the hiring guides, read all the internal documents, read everything, and be able to provide an answer to pretty much anything today. It should be done. And if we've still got like preset templates and like decision tree type formats, that's really behind the curve, and maybe we are behind the curve in recruiting. But Baz, I find that really interesting, everything you said.
Can I add one more thing, Hung? One of the things,
very
because I
quickly,
actually
mate.
implemented a chatbot for JobPal before they were bought by Smart Recruiters, which was amazing, but we really were thinking about the use cases. I was working for one of the few companies that hire internationally. We saw that the main questions were, can I get a visa? And how does the Dutch tax system work? We had all that information on our website, but because the usability expert had no say in how the website actually used, because some corporate communication people were more involved than the people who actually knew what they were doing. Our chatbot basically got links to all the information on the website, which worked amazingly because our website was total crap and we couldn't change it because of internal politics.
Yeah, really. I mean, I think chatbots will get better, and eventually this will basically be ubiquitous. But there's bumps in the road, and that's something to bear in mind of when it comes to tech. Okay, Bas, listen, let's go switch into assessment, because assessment is also something you've got some type of strong background and feeling in. What sort of assessment tech do you think will come to prominence in 2025 that which will recede, in your opinion, particularly with an angle of, look, all candidates are using generative AI these days? What goes up, what goes down, in your opinion?
There are 2 things which I see happening here. First of all, I was actually positively surprised by the number of high volume companies here in my country, in the Netherlands, that do not ask for a CV for volume roles. I literally spoke, every TA leader I spoke from a retailer said, we banned the CV for every job in the stores themselves, except for store managers. But so basically, and most of them replaced them with some form of gamified assessment tech. Now, let me be very honest. Usually they replace it with stuff which you shouldn't replace it with because it's just not scientifically validated. The buying process for assessment tech is really, really bad, and you should have somebody who actually knows what they're doing alongside you. But the number of companies which changed for volume roles everything which from CV to assessment is incredible. I was just surprised. And some of them are actually on their 2nd or 3rd iteration already because they found out the tool was crap and they replacing it probably with, again, a crap tool. But,
Well, it's very encouraging. I think that basically, by the way, one of my roundabout predictions is that skills-based hiring wraps all the way back to a sort of early career or volume-based hiring, and it's going to be the ideological cover for the deployment of AI assessment tech. So in other words, we're going to just hit people with a game, an assessment, some sort of behavioral thing, some sort of questionnaire, whatever it is. No CV required, just pass this thing and then you go next stage. I think that 50% of high volume hirers, meaning if you're hiring more than 1,000 people per year, más o menos, you're going to be having some sort of AI tech, sort of assessment tech in there. Okay, Bas, we've got to move on, man, because we've got a massive crowd of people to come. Thanks a lot for your contribution, mate. You do want to say one more thing, so go ahead.
Second part of assessment, which I see massively growing, is interview analysis tech. So the companies that listen in on your interviews and actually analyze. There's a Dutch company which I love, is Into Dialogue. They've won 2 awards in November here in my country, which literally is your co-pilot on an interview, but it doesn't just take notes. And based on actual science and organizational psychology, it will analyze your interview, give you feedback, both as a hiring manager, like these were the right questions you asked, and they got us really a lot of information. It doesn't just take notes, but it also says these are the things which you could hear were actually most important to this candidate. These are their strong skills, etc., based on actual science. So I love interview intelligence, and that's actually something which, if you're asking me which is degrowth in assessment, it's interview intelligence.
I agree with this, even though the adoption rate is still surprisingly low. So there's huge amounts of growth to go in that marketplace. Okay, Bas, great to see you, mate. We're going to kick you off stage now because we've got other people to come on. Thanks for joining Brainfood Live On Air, start of the year.
Cheers.
Cool. All right, let's keep rolling forward. Very interesting. Any commentary on any of that, Adam, before we bring on Madeline and Tim, actually, because they've been, no, we're going to bring on Madeline, Tim, and George, I think, because they've been like so active on the chat. We've got to kind of get them to stop doing that. So let's bring them on.
Well, yeah, the only thing, yeah, I enjoyed everything that Baz just said. I enjoyed learning, and his point about interview intelligence is a very good one. I think it is going to be a fast-growing area this year. And I've got to say, from my vantage point, I am surprised that you said it, that Madeline and other people have said it here in the chat, that it's like adoption's low, because I can see like most companies I know have done it already. Like, so I've seen a lot of it.
That's because we're in a bubble, mate. Because if you speak to the vendors themselves, and I've asked them to just quantify percentage-wise where they're at in terms of distribution, and they're saying stuff like 5% adoption rate. So they've got massive growth to go. Okay, look at all these wonderful people. They look so beautiful here. How is that possible? Aren't we all meant to be getting older, folks? Not for these guys here. Okay, let's introduce ourselves. Let's go left to right as I see it. George, wonderful to see you. Can you quickly introduce yourself? Who are you? What it is you do?
Well, when I woke up today, I was the founder and chief analyst at WorkTech, but I noticed on the way in, I've been moved to Workbench, I guess. I don't know. Anyhow, I am the founder at WorkTech, and I cover all of the growth capital coming into the space, do a lot of advisory on the disruptions that are happening right now in the vendor and user community, and excited to be here.
Fantastic. And Workbench, please don't sign up for Workbench. WorkTech, sign up to WorkTech, because it is definitely one of the leading sources for information for investment into HR tech, which is important for obviously anybody building tooling, but also quite interesting for users, because you can see where the growth is and where the confidence is from the investment community. Great to have you on the show, George. We have Madeline here as well. Wonderful to see you, Madeline. Can you quickly introduce yourself? Who are you? What is you do?
Sure. Thanks for having me on. I think Workbench had a pretty impressive exit, George. So congratulations on that.
I'm waiting on the check.
I'm the founder of Aptitude Research. I do research on HR tech, and excited to be here.
Fantastic stuff. I'm sharing the links in the chat stream, by the way. Make sure you follow all of these people or connect with them on LinkedIn. And finally, we have the one and only Tim Sackett here. Tim, great to see you. Who are you? What is
Hey,
you,
guys.
man?
CEO of HRU Tech, and then also I'm like Bass, but for Michigan, in the US. I'm very similar. I wrote a book. I talk about recruiting.
I would never compare yourself to Bass. I mean, there's lots of reasons why you should not do that. But we'll get onto that later. Anyway, cool. Let's talk about the investment side. Firstly, where are we with your forecast for 2025? In fact, let's do a quick recap on where we were in 2024. What were the categories that received investment? What are the categories that are growing or not growing? So I guess, George, I'm going to go with you first, and then just switch, sort of go left to right on this again.
Yeah, the interesting thing about the numbers is what didn't happen, not as much as what did happen. So like the economy, like a lot of stuff in 2024, at the top line, it looked like last year, and it looked like everything outside of the frenzy that happened in 2021, 2022. So total, the dust is still settling, because Q4 was a lot of small deals and a lot of I'm still getting through it, but it looks like we're going to end up 4.2 to 4.5 billion, which is just under what we did last year. The first 3 quarters were really strong. Fourth quarter, not so much. At a high level, who got the money last year? Everybody but talent acquisition. Talent acquisition came in super low. Who did get the money in talent acquisition? Assessments, anything AI driven that was material to the process, but a lot of earlier stage. You had some later stage like Series C at Ashby and some others that were almost anomalies over the year. So what I'm seeing rolling into 2025 is a short-term optimism based on while I'm covering everything globally, the lion's share of the investment is in the U.S. And coming from the U.S. And that, you've got bright spots like the U.K. and France will bubble up here and there, some emerging markets in South America that will pop up quarter to quarter, but consistently the U.S. drives a lot of this capital. And the confidence in the short term with no new regulations, no new taxes, benefiting investors and large corporations. This is creating some short-term confidence, but long-term, we're still very much quarter to quarter, wait and see what happens. So I expect 2025 to continue to come out of the gates somewhat strong, but it's really hard to predict the future right now. What's certain is the other thing about what's not happening is what's driving these trends. I'm seeing. Well, I know we'll get into that. There are so many windows closing on some traditional HR technology right now, including some models that were launched in the last 2 years, or let's say 3 years at the sort of just prior and during the initial generative AI frenzy, and we're going to see a lot of them get deemed irrelevant as the shift comes back to the platform, and a lot of those platforms are now releasing a lot of their deeper capabilities around recruiting operations, for this audience, around assessments, around integrations, and so forth. And I think investors are not necessarily savvy enough to understand that, but they're savvy enough to understand, hold up, let's see what happens at the platform level. Let's see what happens with AI, where that's what I'm seeing in the market right now. And so many windows, so much disruption and consolidation that I'm expecting this year.
Really interesting, George. Tim and Madeline, you're both nodding away on the number of points there. I mean, the picture I'm reading from I don't think there was any dispute as to George's analysis. TA Tech was down. Why? Because basically hiring, growth was not there in terms of, companies being motivated or urgently trying to hire people, especially on tech, which previously was a big driver for a lot of the TA Tech innovation. Was a lot, we need to hire engineers. Actually, there's a lot of kind of talent floating around. So the pressure was off, and it may have shifted a little bit towards verification, background checking, assessment tech, but sourcing, top of the funnel, not that interested. People thinking we don't need this, maybe we're at the point where point solutions are also struggling, because who knows, with the capabilities of AI, we're thinking, just sit tight for 6 months and somebody's going to roll out a feature that's going to do the job. What's your take on this? Do you agree with some of those points, and what does it mean for TA folks? What's the signal that we get as users? Madeline, let's go with you.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, George knows this better than anyone, so I absolutely agree with him. And it's what we're seeing as well. I mean, investment in TA Tech has been lower than it's been certainly 4 or 5 years ago. George brought this up at HR Tech at the Pitch Fest competition, and I've been seeing this too, because this is where I've been getting a lot of inquiries from investors and PE firms, is around SMB payroll. And I think the TA Tech fits into that with the platform play. I mean, you look at these big companies, like Hi Bob and Gusto and Deal and others that have done really well, have taken a ton of investment, but have delivered on a lot of that. We just saw the acquisition of Paycor by Paychex this week. So that, kind of platform play in the SMB has been driven by a lot of these payroll providers. So I think that's been really interesting. And then I think, and this is, I don't have data to support this, but this has been my opinion based on a lot of interviews and conversations with companies, is the whole TA transformation that companies are going through right now, which is often just reducing the number of recruiters that they have in-house or reducing costs, has been delaying their investment in a TA tech stack, whether that's point solutions or changing platforms. This kind of TA transformation that companies are going through has put the brakes on, should we invest in solutions we know might help us improve the recruiter experience, improve the candidate experience, whatever those drivers are.
Yeah, really good. And Madeline, don't worry about data. We don't do data here on Brainfood Live. We want anecdotes only, folks. So,
I've got lots of bossy opinions, so
that's it. So let's go to a fact-free opinion only. Tim Sackett, let's go to you, sir. This sounds bad for TA, man. I mean, what's the story? So yeah. I'm hearing that, okay, we have consolidation, we have, people, cutting the TA team. So obviously the budget for buying TA tech is going down. Like, what does the future look like? Give us a kind of a play out for 2025 for the users of this technology.
I'm actually super hopeful for it. One is, so if let's assume like the Winston smart recruiters, like that's going to be the future, right? So we have literally 75% of the work recruiters do today is just going to go away. What it leaves us with then is us looking as TA leaders, TA teams, is what is the really cool crap that we can actually do that we've been saying we could do for decades and we never would, like actually going out and knowing who the best talent in the market is, searching for the best talent, getting them interested in us, actually doing recruiting, right? Recruiting. I want Hung Lee is the best person in the market. I want him to come work for us. How long does that take me to work Hung before he goes, okay, I'm going to come work for Tim, right? Like we don't have that capacity now, but potentially AI is going to give us that capacity. Operationally, I think what we're dealing with right now, and again, we see the data from like the ATS is saying, hey, the applies have doubled over the year because you have candidates using AI to apply, but also to match every single apply to the job perfectly. You have ATS is actually reminding candidates to say, oh, by the way, you forgot these skills because you worked at this job and you should have this on your profile and you don't. So that increases the match score. So I go back to a little bit of what Bass was saying in terms of, I think that like in the 2025, 2026, the interview technology space is going to take off. Because if you think about, if we take away top of funnel, screening, sourcing, all of this stuff, it's going to be the TA teams, what's going to be left now is to say, okay, I have to interview really good. I have to interview really deep. I have to assess, are these people really saying who they say they are because they've used AI? So I have AI developing the profile, I have AI matching. And it's going to take me going, okay, I'm going to have a real face-to-face conversation with you for a long time. I'm going to ask you a lot of questions. I'm going to dig in and find out if you're really lying to me or not. And so we have all this stuff kind of coming together. And what washes out, I think, is TA teams actually spending the vast majority of their time searching for really, really good talent, understanding who that is, and then interviewing the crap out of a lot of people.
Yeah, really, really good. Adam, you want to say something about that? No, that's okay.
No,
that's
I agree with everything.
By the way, I'm keeping a counter. I'm keeping a counter. There's been 45 people that have walked into the bathroom behind Adam since we've been on.
I'm just hoping someone doesn't come out with a muscle top again. I mean, this is meant to be a safe for work family show, folks. But no, really, really interesting. So the read here is that maybe the bulk of the TA stuff that we've been doing the last 10, 15 years, maybe that's going to recede because technology is going to take on a bunch of this. However, for the core talent, elite talent that basically is not going to ever reply to an advert, whether it's roboticized or not, they're the headhunted types. So that type of work is going to continue because human beings probably will execute better. This is where your experience matters, your capital matters, your network matters. and then you might be deployed as like the first human in the loop. When the machine kind of has ground through a bunch of candidates, they're actually right. They're coming in and they're going to interview. You've got to drop in and you've got to be able to verify a lot of that stuff. I think that your assessment on cultural fit, I think cultural fit comes back. We're going to rehabilitate cultural fit, folks, because we're going to call it something else. But we're going to just basically time warp back to 2015 when that was still a thing, because what else is a recruiter doing? You're not going to be doing functional verification because the tech's already done that. The only value you're adding is to figure out, is this person a good match or fit to the context of the team that I'm recruiting into? And you don't want the hiring manager or the team members doing this. They're busy with other stuff. That's your job. So I think there's going to be no values fit. It's not about values, so a cultural fit. Let's rehabilitate that. Let's stop with the swapping in or out of words. What we mean is what we mean. Anyway, okay. Let's think about. Sorry, you're going to wave at me, George. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just said one quick thing. I think I agree with everything you both said, but there's a huge difference between how this will look at a very large enterprise. And I agree with everything Tim said in an environment that's highly automated with a strong platform and an IT department and a lot of innovation happening. But when I get down into the mid-market and I get down to 1,000 employees, what platform are they using? How automated is the process? So the impact of this transformation will feel very different for folks in different market segments. Also, demographics of like what types of folks am I recruiting? Frontline, high volume versus sort of field, remote based. It's going to be very messy and it's going to be very challenging. And I think a lot of this is going to look like companies getting more efficient, more productive, companies growing and leaning on existing resources and not bringing in a ton more recruiters, except on more of you're going to see a lot of project-based stuff, like, hiring 50 recruiters, staff up a new office, staff up a new project, and then those 50 recruiters are gone or move on to something else.
Really good point. Does the market like more clearly bifurcate between the high volume frontline hiring and business as usual type of recruiting? Maybe we even start labeling the recruiting job differently because it will feel and be very different, simply because the activities will almost be zero overlap between those two functions. But there's a potential pathway for either of us to go into there. Okay, cool. Let's just roll on real quick. Oh, by the way, we haven't even talked about internal mobility yet. There may be another way in which recruiters might be able to pivot their kind of eye as to what to do, because that may well be another thing that expands as companies think, you know what, if we stick an advert out there, we're going to get completely snowed under with candidates. That's a huge amount of work. There's got to be people internally that we need to redeploy and reskill. And in fact, I'm sure there's going to be huge government pressure down the line for us to do that, because there's no question, if AI does what we think it's going to do, it's going to be disruptive to more than just people in TAs. Every department's having this conversation. So it means that we have to either reskill these people, otherwise we're in a societal crisis, folks. Okay, before we let you go, let's do one solid forecast each. Like, we need to have specific forecasts, folks. What are you going to be confident on? No generalizations. Obviously, don't say anything that's going to get you into confidentiality issues. But what is the thing you're willing to bet your hat on in 2025 end of year that's going to happen in recruiting? George Larocque, let's go to you.
We're going to see some major consolidation and changes in anything focused around where I've been spending a lot of time lately, which is high volume and frontline recruitment. So to get very specific, programmatic advertising for jobs has basically given us more of a bad thing at a slightly lower cost. And the employers are getting tired of spending with the Indeeds and ZipRecruiters to look at the same candidates over and over again. And this new wave of technology is we're going to see a shift in spend from job boards to direct connections with candidates. Recruitment market advertising firms are going to do very well, especially those that are tech forward. The other thing we're going to see is companies well, specifically Paradox won't have the market to themselves anymore. So Smart Recruiters released Winston. You're going to see some acquisitions in 2025 from platform players moving directly at that frontline automation space. And you're going to see a huge suite of tools in these platforms supporting everything from recruitment operations and marketing. You're going to see a lot of consolidation, a lot of disruption around that space, and it's going to be a really interesting first 2 quarters here.
Yeah, year of M&A, I think so. Okay, Madeline, give us your prediction, your forecast for this year.
Yeah, I love the co-pilot agent assistant conversation, but that's been talked about, so I won't use that. But I think we're going to finally see that there will be some standardization around AI and how vendors are using AI, how companies should be evaluating providers with it. I think the fact that we haven't had any has delayed all the sales cycles for all these vendors. It's made it very frustrating for organizations. I just had a briefing with FairNow yesterday. They're obviously looking at doing that in the industry. I think there's others that will be following suit, but I think we're going to see some type of program in place or coalition, even with the government, where there is some type of standardization that's going to be set up.
Yeah, very, very good. Tim, your view, in fact, maybe you can answer the question that Bass has mentioned, question for the panel. Do you see a real AI agent in TA 2025? Yes or no, Tim?
Yeah, well, I think we already saw it with the launch of Winston with Smart Recruiters, but also LinkedIn's hiring assistant for the most part is actually an agent. But they said that will be out sometime in 2025, probably third quarter. They didn't even have a price on it when I saw it in the fourth quarter of last year. So I do think that will be out there. For me, for 2025, I think we're going to see a resurgence in a lot of talk around blockchain as we have candidates using AI to like build profiles and apply for jobs. I think you're going to see some companies going, wait a minute, how do we know if these people are really who they say they are? And so you're going to start to see more and more investment go into this kind of TA, HR, blockchain piece where we can go, I want to know somebody is actually somebody when they apply. And how do we know that? And I'm already hearing a lot of like PE or VC investors like asking about this, like, hey, who's doing the blockchain HR stuff? And there's just not a lot there right now.
There is in the chat right there, Talent Protocol, my buddies in Lisbon, they've been on it. And by the way, full disclosure, guys, I actually put some money in these guys. So I'm totally biased. But they are, I think, really ahead of the curve when it comes down to, okay, we have a problem because no one can actually know whether the person has done the job. Can we actually use blockchain to verify that they have performed this activity and they have a skill level associated with this, and that becomes a passport that they can take different places? Do check it out. CV Wallet, of course, also is on the same track. So make sure you check those two out as well. Okay, guys, we've got to keep moving on. George LaRocque and Madeline Lorano, Tim Sackett, thank you so much for joining us. Wonderful to have your contribution, folks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Happy New Year.
Cool. Jim and Amit, we're going to bring you on in a sec, but I've got to bring Torin on first. We're going to be running a little bit over our standard time, I'm afraid to say, but this is always going to be a case with a forecast show like this. I hope that's going to be okay. Very interesting. Hey, Adam, we're talking about the agent side of things. I think that's going to be the hiring assistant from LinkedIn. Looks like it's one of those. It's the distribution that LinkedIn has would just make it kind of very obvious to people very quickly. It depends how they actually make that real. I think it will force ATSs to come up with something very, very similar.
Well, the thing about agents is, I mean, there's no major applicant tracking system that hasn't already developed agentic technology or will be doing it today, or will buy things that already have. It's just going to be table stakes. It's going to be like having resume parsing and having generative AI and things like that. It's going to become table stakes. It's another thing that in a year's time, probably we won't be talking about it so much because everything's embedded.
Yeah. And this is the thing I think Madeline was kind of inferring basically the point solutions might end up just becoming like features, and those features might just become standard parts of the platform experience. experience. So really interesting to see what this direction of travel is. I still think there's going to be need for specialist solutions, though. It's just particularly in those areas where interview support, for instance, if we see that as a bigger part of how recruiters will end up spending their time, and also verification, is the person right or wrong? So at some point, a human being is still going to be a standard of approval. You can imagine that being kind of even a premium service. I think Torren's actually not here, so he might have just dropped away. No worries, Torren. If you're here at some point, just let me know and we'll get you on. But let's bring Jim on, and we'll talk about what it looks like from the internal point of view. Let's see if Jim's still there. I hope so. He may have gone as well. No, he's here. We are running a bit late.
On the topic of point
Amit, we'll bring you on a sec, okay? Mm-hmm.
On the topic of point solutions, I mean, if you think about a recruitment process as having, say, 70 different things, right? If there's something that can only do one of those 70 things, it's just not going to get any time with the buyer. It's as simple as that.
It's going to be hard for the buyer. And Jim is a buyer, and Jim is also a buyer of amazing knitwear. Once again,
It's snowing like crazy outside here in the North Georgia mountains, and I thought, Hung wants a sweater. So I wore a nice jumper for you.
There he is. And actually, Torren has dropped in as well. So wonderful to see you, Torren. And he looks like a cold man as well. Bro, where are you?
Sitting in Baltimore, man. It is cold. But let me just say this to you. I absolutely want to send a digital whisper of health and safety to all of those that are dealing with fires. So me being cold and having a hat on has nothing in comparison to deal with those in California, man.
Yeah, crazy scenes. And yeah, I received an out of office today from someone I wanted to speak to, and that out of office was, hey, listen, I've got to exit the building. And it was like, oh shit, this is real, man. So best wishes to everybody there. Hopefully we can get this fire under control. Okay, let's do some intros. Jim Miller, quickly introduce yourself. Who are you? What it is you do?
Hi, I lead the people function at Ashby, an ATS.
Cool, indeed. And more than that, because I was interested also, you've got to also be the person that kind of inputs into product also. I'd be hugely surprised if that doesn't happen. So wearing two hats, which is really interesting to get your input as to where you see the future for TA as well as TA Tech. And Torren, wonderful to see you. Can you quickly introduce yourself, who you, what it is you do?
Absolutely. Analyst, consultant, coach, speaker, investor, all things diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging.
Indeed so. And again, two folks that's really essential to follow on LinkedIn and elsewhere. Let's go to you first, Torren, because I wanted to drop you in immediately after my outrageous provocation about cultural fit, the return thereof, because we do need to talk about DE&I, man. I mean, there's an article coming into Brainfood on Sunday, and it's going to be, is DE&I under attack? It certainly feels that way. We have to touch on the politics, the kind of the cultural zeitgeist and so forth. Where do you see DE&I in 2025, man? How does it look?
Yeah, so I heard you when you said that, and you also said that values may not be important, or at least I thought I heard you say that values won't be important. And I actually disagree. I think that people are going to still be looking for organizations that align with their values. They want to be with organizations that are pointed in the right direction. And so where's D&I? D&I is going to really adopt that quiet quitting phrase that we were uttering about 24 months ago. What you will see are organizations changing how they classify or how they refer to D&I work. They're going to continue to do it. They may not be as boisterous about it in the public space, but they will continue to do D&I work. And why will they do that, Adam? Because good D&I work is about engagement, it's about productivity, and it's about retention. And those are business initiatives that work no matter what you call them. And the good folks that do D&I, that's the three things that they're focused on.
Yeah, really good points, Torren, and really good to have some sort of like a kind of a validation, because obviously everyone's hearing the rhetoric and seeing sort of where some of the more vocal opponents of D&I, and then that's become something that's into the mainstream, unfortunately. So there is this kind of rhetorical battle going on. What you're saying is, you know what's going to happen is, the work of including more people into the pipeline, creating a more inclusive workforce, these seem to be just fundamental good things to do. There's no sort of situation where I think these are bad things, but perhaps it's going to be less, as you say, boisterous is maybe the right term, and people are going to quietly get on with the job. And perhaps it doesn't feel that way, but it's still going to be ongoing. Jim, you're nodding your head along with this. I'm interested to hear from your point of view as an operating hiring manager. I don't know how many people you got on your team, but I imagine there's a bunch of them. And I'm sure that floats into your mind as well. Where do you sit with D&I sort of going into 2025?
I don't think it's gone away. It's been front and center for us. I have a mandate. One of our operating principles is to hire frustratingly patiently. And to me, that's a mandate for quality. And quality and representation are the same. They're not two separate things. So the way I approach the TA piece is very objectively from the top down. You've seen some of my job descriptions go viral where they're storytelling and trying to create a level playing field through even giving resume writing advice at the job description level for the candidates who are applying for the job, so everyone has an equal chance. And you take that pipeline through and you talk to the very best people, but you look at everybody. One of my commitments to the talent pool is to review every resume that comes in for a job at Ashby across the board, and we don't schedule an interview until we've looked at everybody. So then we can look at the whole pool, objectively select best, and then the best person from any demographic, any background and so on has a chance of getting into that group and has a chance of getting to the end. But if you only review the 10%, the first 10% of applicants, statistically, you will send your representation down as a company. So that's one of those challenges. And I've been blessed with having access to the massive data I had when I was in that role at Google, and I've taken it forward to operating it here.
And Hung, if I could just jump in on that frequency really quickly, Jim, what Jim just described is intentionality. And what I say to everyone that we work with is if you are serious about diversity and inclusion, you will ebb and flow through 4 words: empathy, intentionality, transparency, and proximity. And so what Jim is describing is being intentional about how we are curating our pipelines. I promise you, D&I is not going anywhere. We may call it something different, but it is here to stay because it's important. And even when George referred to project-based work, it's important that we look at how we are structuring and curating our teams.
I would just touch on transparency there, because I think that's the biggest element that's coming in 2025. I'm going to be talking about it a lot. I'm just writing a whole deck on transparency. But it's beholden on us within the TA world to be so transparent that the candidates can self-select out of a job so that they spend their valuable time on a job that they can get, that they are qualified for, that is a good fit for them. So the more transparent we can be, from comp bands all the way through to really well articulated requirements and the why behind those things, sell the candidates out. You'll have less work to do. There'll be less noise, but you'll have more accuracy, and you're doing the right thing. And that's the way that you can mitigate the disappointment to the thousands, which is what's going on now with the huge volumes of applications every job is getting.
Yeah, really good points. I want to just dial back on the issue of not getting the first 10 candidates as your list. There's a few things to bear in mind here, folks. Firstly, we know there's a gender variance as to how quickly people apply for jobs. So we know, for instance, that men generally apply faster to jobs simply because they are more prepared to press send, whereas women spend more time making sure they match all of the criteria. So if you're going really fast and saying, you know what, we're just going to put the job up for 24 hours and we're going to have a look at all of this, who comes in, it will skew towards men. There's no doubt about that. Secondly, we also need to know about all of these artificially sort of AI enablement tools for job seekers. That's obviously becoming prevalent, but you know what? I got a feeling that men are using them more than women also. So we're in a situation where, okay, we get this huge amount of candidates coming through. If we are trying to deal with this by putting kind of peekaboo jobs out there, stick it up for 2 hours when we've got 100 candidates, I think that skews heavily male versus female, and that immediately causes a problem with the diversity of your pipeline. And that's got nothing to do, by the way, is hiring for the best person. I mean, what I'm hearing on the airwaves is that, we want to go to a meritocracy-based recruiting. Guess what? Everyone does. But what is meritocracy isn't shutting a job off at 24 hours. That's not the case. Do you know what I mean? That's simply creating a situation that creates advantage for a small segment of people, and it's not negative to those people, but it may be irrelevant to the job that you're recruiting for, the skills that those early quick movers have. Go ahead, Jim.
But it's also using your data to analyze how long do you need a job posted for, to be able to hire the role, say 3 times over, to end up with 3 fantastic candidates at the end, and then being transparent that there is a closing date and it will be at this date and this time in 3, 4, 5 days time, however long it is, and telling everybody that so that they can feel comfortable that they can spend their time on their application and get it right and polish their resume and answer the application questions and so on, and make that key decision as to whether they want to spend their time there. And then you start the resume review. This is how recruiting was before software. And there's an opportunity for us now with the tools that we have to kind of go back to that methodology. There's some interesting opportunities there to experiment with.
And what Jim is saying is stop relying on time to fill as your measurement of performance, as your measurement of your doing something exceptionally well. That is going to have a scale and such if you are committed to doing diversity and inclusion.
Remarkably, the methodology I'm talking about makes you faster at time to fill, even though you wait at the beginning. Because what happens is you don't fill the calendar of the first interviewer with candidates who aren't the best from the pool. And you get to accelerate at that second stage. And I can see it from the data within our own stuff. We're taking huge percentages off of time to fill using this methodology, but it feels counterintuitive. And I had to do a big change push just to start it in the first place.
On that note, Jim, really important point. It feels counterintuitive. Recruitment is an urgent job. We feel like we've got to rush out, start getting candidates in, etc. But you know what? To get faster to the end goal, which is hiring the best people for your business, it takes a bit more work up front. It's the investment up front that pays dividend at the back end, and that includes all kinds of things like quality of information from the hiring manager, the quality controls you put in when you're speaking to candidates. All of those things are a big part of that picture. Okay, cool. Let's talk about sort of how the TA function might evolve if it is the case, for instance, there's more project work coming in, let's say, more non-full-time recruiting going on. We talk about AI agents all the way through the chat stream there. It's not only in TA where AI agents may make an appearance, it could be in other parts of the organization. Does TA expand scope to kind of go beyond human? I mean, what are your thoughts on this? Is it our role to do that? Do we expand scope to say, you know what, we're there to provide capability, whether it's human talent or, artificial intelligence capability? Or do you think, you know what, that's not our role, we've got to stick with human beings? What are your thoughts on that? Anybody?
I don't know. I mean, we did a report reducing bias in HR using artificial intelligence. And I would say that, knowing that the HR function is challenged with adopting some of these technologies, I would equally say that recruiters are challenged with adopting some of these technologies. I think a lot of organizations are really on the sideline trying to figure out whether or not the investment that has been made in prior years is really returning the investment that they are seeking. And so some organizations are looking at, I don't know if I really want to spend any money right now. Let me look at what we've already spent money on. Let me look at the total cost of ownership for our entire technology stack and really make some prudent and more precise decisions in how we are invested in technology. What does the work landscape look like for us? Will we morph into more of a project-based organization? Are we looking at penetrating new communities, new geographies? We bring in new products, new services online. I think all of that is going to really determine how the work is done in the organization and then who we need to recruit into the organization. I've always said doing diversity and inclusion is not about just taking a requisition. It's about understanding the requisition and where it's aligned. Is that organization in continuous improvement? Are they in transformation? Are they in sustainability, maturation, hypergrowth? It really depends on the organization and what stage of the business they're in, which will then determine what technologies we're using, which will then determine how we are putting our teams together. So I don't know if we can really accurately answer that question, but what I will say is that we got to do a better job of how we bring in technology into the business so that we can continue to protect our D&I efforts.
Yeah, really important point. I think people who tend to watch webinars typically are on the more leading edge, more innovative, more prepared to kind of innovate. That's like 2% of the population. The vast majority of people in people work actually maybe a lot further behind than you imagine. So we kind of always feel a little bit more leading edge than perhaps we are. Going on to this though, Jim, you're recruiting recruiters for your team. Let's imagine that's the case. Have your criteria changed from what it was, let's say 3 years ago to what it is now? Has the recruiter role changed in your mind such that, okay, these are the things that are going to stay the same, but actually now I'm recruiting for these types of skills also? If so, what are those skills?
Absolutely. It's process optimization. It's systems integration. It's creativity around systems, because we're in a very special role. Customer zero, as Adam called it earlier in the chat. My team get to do the testing. My team get to work with the product team on giving their contextual information around how the product is developed. So I have a very, very unique role when I'm hiring recruiters. So that's fascinating. And to come back to what Tim was saying earlier about cool stuff, and then intersecting that with the AI piece, it's actually critical that the TA function and the people function as a whole become much, much stronger in the AI space because of headcount planning. One of the fundamental parts of our role, if you've got teams that are being enhanced by AI, you need to know about it and understand the impact, because you don't need to hire as many people into those functions. Otherwise, you'll overwhelm other functions that don't have AI support. Or conversely, if you've got AI producing huge amounts in sales, for example, because of automated BDRs, sales folks, with the outreach, then your customer success or your implementation teams may need bolstering with more headcount, because otherwise you risk reputational damage because your company's doing too well, but you can't bring the customers on board. So you've got to be hiring recruiters and leaders who've got the capability to understand that and understand it across your business, and then understand what that looks like as a platform to the conversation earlier, and the standardization of AI. There's no point in bringing in tools that you don't have an API integration into your current platform. And is your current platform future-proofed? Don't just buy something that's targeted at SMEs. Buy something that can take you from the journey of where you are today to where you think you'll be in 3, 4, 5 years. That gives you that stability to anchor on.
Yeah. Here's a question specifically for. Can I ask a question specifically for Torin? And that is that, like, with the rapid development of technology like this, I'm a little bit concerned that the winners here are going to be the traditional winners over the last 100 years, and not people who are starting from further back in their careers and lives. So, for example, if I'm starting today in poverty, or I'm starting today as a middle-class person, like coming into the workplace, I think I've already got a lot more access to and are learning about things like generative AI and other technology that's already out there. Is this going to exacerbate problems around equity?
Yeah, I mean, Adam, it's a great point, and it's part of the reason why we wrote the report. We wrote the report because we don't want people sitting on the sidelines. We do want to provide underrepresented and marginalized communities with access to the information, and so it is incumbent upon each of us that we are focused on how is it that we are distributing information and who are the audiences that we are placing this information in front of. These technologies are going to make it really, really challenging for a number of marginalized and continuously ignored communities to have access to this project-based work, this contractual or freelance-based work, this work that is very agile and distributed and moving. It will continue to make it challenging, but the internet did exactly the same thing, which is why I go back to 4 easy referenceable words: empathy, intentionality, proximity, and transparency. We must be intentional about staying in front of audiences that are well qualified, but often ignored. For instance, Ernst & Young historically has gone to more than 200 academic universities every year for their college recruiting. Historically, more than 200. Most organizations, they may recruit from 7 to 10. EY is intentional. They're very intentional. We must be more intentional. Stop spending money where we've recruited for the last 10, 15, 20 years. Start reinvesting that money in creating new relationships with new universities, new associations, new communities, so that we can continue to have some degree of equity and equality in the process. Great question.
Yeah, really important point that you raised, Adam, and great response, Torin. There's no question that AI is a transformational moment for us, but it's going to transform faster for the people who are already in position to take advantage of it. And I don't think anybody really wants to see a world where we have just an increase of inequality going forward. That seems to me to be completely firstly immoral, but secondly, how does that even play out for the people that so-called win it? I mean, we're living on a single planet. We have to make sure that if there's some sort of breakthrough that changes people's lives, that's shared as widely as possible throughout sort of our own societies, but also throughout the world. No reason why someone should be stuck in a kind of a regimen because they, for some reason, don't have access. That's for water. Everyone needs to have that as a right. Okay, folks, we have to move on. Quick forecast for both of you before I do this. Forecast that you're certain on 2025. Can you be as specific as possible? Torin Ellis.
Yeah, I want to thank Plum and Humanly for sponsoring our Reducing Bias in HR using artificial intelligence. That's the first thing. Second thing, we will continue to see a decline or an exodus of chief diversity officers, but they will reemerge inside of the organization with a new title doing some of the same work in a different department.
Very, very good. And I'm going to ask you later what you think that title might be, Torin, but maybe I'll give you some time to think about what that is. Jim, give us one specific forecast you have for 2025.
My forecast is that your finance leader in the company you work for will come to you at some point during this year with an AI product for TA that they've been told will save money, improve efficiency, do all of those wonderful things. And if you don't have a strong opinion and a strategy and an understanding of the difference between AI, machine learning, automation, the selective versus assistive technology and so on, anything you say will be dismissed. Build your knowledge now, understand this, build a strategy right first, get ahead of this.
Can I just ask Jim, quick question. Do you think HR technology or in fact, specifically, do you think, HR technology companies should be actively pitching the CFO in that case?
They already are. This week, first week back after the holidays, I've had 15 different AI technologies pitch people or talent technology into Ashby. And they've come in through a variety of different angles, all sorts of angles. They're all going after the different persona because they're not targeting the head of TA, because the head of TA looks at this and goes, we probably don't want to, or it doesn't integrate with us. And they can't tell that story about cost savings or the efficiencies or any of the other magical fairy dust.
Does that piss you off? Does that piss you off when somebody goes into the CFO or somewhere else rather than coming into the people function?
I kind of enjoy it because they end up with me anyway. But think about all the other companies out there that doesn't have someone in TA people who's been in this kind of intersection of technology for so long.
All right, let's read the other. I'm going to send this to the chat here. Read the other sort of post that John wrote in, and I featured in the newsletter. He does talk exactly about this. We have to get basically finance literate. We've got to get procurement literate. We've got to talk much more closely with CFOs, a little bit of a guide to how to do that. Okay, we've got to let you go. Torin Ellis, great to see you, man. Jim Miller, great to see you also. You have a happy new year, folks, and we'll get you back at some point later on this year.
Thank you.
Oh, we We've just removed them unceremoniously. Okay, cool. Folks, we're well over time, but we're going to keep on going just a little while because we've got Amit Taylor to bring on. For the folks who don't know Amit Taylor, he is the one-man legend behind a product called TrueUp. And TrueUp, if you don't know it, is one of the very first products that came onto the market that started tracking the big tech layoff sort of period. And since that time, it's continued to do that. And it's been widely referenced in all kinds of sort of situations. I've seen it in FT, I've seen it in BBC, I've seen it in all kinds of places. And it's totally nuts. I don't think people realize there's like one guy in New York that's built this. So I wanted to bring Amit on here. Reason why is because he's going to show us some charts. And we're going to finish off the year with a bit of a forecast as to where we think particularly tech hiring is going. Because that's the key focus for the double forecasting. Yes, I should do that, but unfortunately, we're going to be well into the year by the time we do that, Bas. So unless you want to keep doing it in February, which is too late, so we can't do it. We don't have Amit on. I think for some reason technology is causing us problems today. Let's see if I can just remove Amit and I'll get him back. Something's gone wrong here here we go. That may make more sense. Anyway, someone wants to come on stage. Here we go. It's got to be him. Accept. Let's see if that happens. Oh no, no camera.
I should start talking, shouldn't I? Go, hi Amit, how are you? Good to see you. Like, and you're completely out of the loop, and I'm just like,
yeah,
but I can't see Amit.
No, I don't think it's happening. Amit, sorry, mate. It looks like the gods are not with us today on terms of the internet. We'll have to leave it there. Folks, that's about it for this week. Thanks for watching, everybody. Great to have you on the show and being with us. We're well over time. And Bas, you're right. We should have done 2 parts, but we don't have time because I'm actually not here. Brainfood next week. I'm going to be in Copenhagen. I'm actually going to be giving a talk right at this time next week. So that's the reason why we can't do the show. But we'll be back the week following. We're going to be talking about rec load. What is the right number of requirements for a recruiter in the era of AI? If AI is going to be so damn productive, does that change the expectations for a recruiter? And if so, what is the right number? We don't know. We're going to bring on a bunch of heroes that are going to talk us through it. Make sure you sign up for that show, folks. And if you enjoy this type of conversation, follow the channel. You can do this on Crowdcast. If you're watching this on LinkedIn, follow my LinkedIn. I do this every week. And you should be able to see the show from my LinkedIn as well. Okay, that's about it. Happy New Year, everyone. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in 2 weeks' time. Cool. That was all right, wasn't it?
That was a really, really great show. But actually, do you know something? The quality of the chat was better than any Brainfood Live I can ever remember. In fact, there was just so many great comments and stuff, and really, really loved that.
Yeah, it's, you know what, there's a way I should really scrape this stuff down and make it accessible, because there's definitely more to chew over on that. So yeah, the chat is just kind of feels a little bit undermined because there's some great in there. Anyway, listen, yeah, good to see you, Adam. What you planned for this weekend? Anything interesting, mate?
Well, I was going to go to the Glasgow Warriors tonight, rugby against Racing 92, and the problem is it's an 8 p.m. kickoff and it's going to be -4, and I've got an allergic reaction to like minus conditions. So
yeah,
I have given my tickets away. I've given my tickets away.
You have to be very committed to watch any sport at these temps. All right, mate.
Yeah.
Cheers. Listen, you have a nice night. You'll see you later, okay?
See you.
All right, folks, that's it. I'll see you in 2 weeks' time, okay? If you're in Copenhagen next week, let me know.